we're going to have a bit of fun in this session, I think. This is maybe not such a hardcore AI talk. This is maybe seeing how we could use some of the technology we already have to do some exciting things. So I hope you enjoy it. My name's Callum. I'm a .NET developer. I'm based in the UK. I mainly work with a CMS, a web CMS called Umbraco. I speak at a lot of events all over the world, and I'm really excited to be here today too. I organize a bunch of events as well, and some conferences, and I really love donuts. And I'm here to tell you today that the web is broken. It's completely broken. In fact, I'm not going to tell you this. I have no authority to say this. However, the father of the internet, Tim Berners-Lee, actually did say this. In a blog post he wrote back in 2017, I believe it was, celebrating an anniversary for the internet, he said that how the web has evolved in the modern day is not how he ever invented it to be. You just have to look on the internet for a few moments to realize some of the reasons why. These are actually from April, but if you look at the dates, you'll notice they're only a week apart. Millions of users' data being leaked on the internet. Troy Hunt doing a great job of putting them all in Have I Been Pwned. In one particular case, the first one, in fact, was Club Penguin, or a forum for Club Penguin, so it's potentially kids' data as well. That's quite a serious issue. This is when I last checked, that might be wrong now, that over 500 million leaked or hacked passwords in the Have I Been Pwned service. That's pretty severe. How many people have seen these kind of things on the internet? I don't think that's too surprising. I know whenever I visit home and a parent goes, "Can you check my computer? I was told I needed to install Adobe Acrobat to read this PDF, and now there's things popping up all over the place." It's like, yeah, people get tricked, and if you're not necessarily aware of what you're doing, you can quite easily get fooled into doing these things. In 2018, so last year, 800 million people, over 800 million people worldwide, were affected by a virus in some kind of way. That's across laptops, desktops, and even mobile devices. This is people getting kind of deceived, tricked. No one wants to get a virus. The web is broken. All of these things are as a result of the internet. But actually, it's completely our fault. Everyone who is building something for the internet and building things for users using modern technology has a responsibility to stop these kind of things from happening. And it would be really cool if we could find a nice way to do that. Security for users isn't actually a privilege. It should be a right. People have the right to sign up for something and not have their details leaked. It's just crazy to think that people wouldn't care so much about that. And there's a few ways that we kind of do that nowadays. With good encryption, with just good practices for handling passwords and storing data and making sure the right people have access to it. You have some maybe more advanced things like monitoring the location that a user logs in to your site from, or just making sure that if someone's tried a few too many times to log into an account, that you lock it out and let someone know.
websites, you simply do a call to the Azure API with their login history, and it will go, that location doesn't look right. You don't have to implement really any logic anymore to handle that. Azure just does it, which is really cool. It's super cheap, like 10 cents, 15 cents for 1,000 transactions, and of course, a nice generous free tier. Becoming more and more accessible. Yeah, the object it comes back with, as you'd expect with any sort of prediction, says, we think this is we're 90% sure that this doesn't really match with the trends we've got, so yeah, you might want to flag that for users. But as I mentioned before, saying that, okay, someone has logged into your account and we're now going to kick you out or make sure your account's logged isn't really a solution. Being proactive is not the same as being reactive. We really want to be proactive, actually preventing people from getting into the situation in the first place, not having to fix it when things screw up. I think a big part of this, and I think we're going to start hearing these terms more and more over the next couple of years, is the idea of security experience. That we need to make things better for our users. A lot of the issues with leaked data, for example, come from people using 12345 as a password, or using things that have maybe been found in data breaches before too. We're seeing this in other places too. The SSL certificate debate, something that's been going on for many, many years, but browsers are finally starting to flag to users that, hey, when a site doesn't have an SSL certificate, we're going to tell you it's not secure. And most people in the world probably don't know or care what an SSL certificate is. They've just been trained to look for that green box that says, yes, this is all good. But when things start becoming a little bit more in your face and aggressive, this is not secure, you need to do something about it, people start to pay attention. This is a joke, and I'm not going to read them all out, but one of them, I think, says something about Texas. Yeah, other words that can't be used are Texas, child, and the months of the year. So there's all kinds of crazy requirements you see on websites for you need to create a strong password. But actually, if you get presented with a big wall of text that says, here's all of the things you need to do to be secure, well, that's actually not very friendly. And people are just probably going to use the same password they use on every other site. And if they get told to change their password frequently, they're just going to put a 1 at the end of it or an exclamation point. These are just natural human behaviors because ultimately users don't really care. They just want to log in, but they also don't want their data leaked. It's our responsibility to make sure that people actually stay safe. GitHub have done a fantastic job of this. This is just calling off to the Have I Been Pwned API. When you log into GitHub, going, you might want to change your password. It was found in a data breach. And yes, it's a big organization, but they're just calling an API that's publicly available to everyone here. And it's a really good API. It's cheap. It's like $3 a month now. It used to be free, but given that it's almost unlimited to use and you can just call off to this from your website, I think $3 is very reasonable. But how would you actually integrate that into one of our systems in the real world? So I just knocked something together. The CMS I use, I mentioned, is called Umbraco. It looks like this. They have a login. People who maybe wouldn't consider themselves to be technical, log into the system every day. They might need to change some text, and they don't really care. They just want to go in and out. But this is also the gateway to potentially a company's whole website. Imagine if anyone could compromise a user. What if admin had a password of 12345? A lot of WordPress sites get hacked for very similar reasons. So, whilst not trying to make my site more secure, we can introduce APIs like Have I Been Pwned to prompt our users to help us make it more secure. An example of that is we use AngularJS in Umbraco, but if you use anything really, a bit of JavaScript, you can call off to an API, you can get a result and present that to the user in a nice way. So I have some code. Let me zoom that in a bit. Yeah, I have some code that just says when someone puts a value into an email field or a password field, call off to my API, make sure that we're going to check that against how I component, and if you have a nice result, just explain to the user why they're seeing that. And you can see an example of that here. So if I start going admin@admin.com and I click off the field, there we go. I just did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as my password, and as you can see, that's been breached 56,000 times. And it comes up with a nice warning to the user to say, hey, maybe you want to do something about this. It's a super simple thing, and it starts to make a big difference to the way users interact with our services. But of course, I'm here to talk about AI. This is not a global API now. This is how can we actually use some of these AI technologies that we have to also make a difference. Now, two-factor auth, or 2FA, or MFA, hell do those acronyms even mean? And if you went and maybe spoke to your parents or grandparents, how many of them would know what 2FA meant? And if an app pops up and says, you need to enable 2FA, they're going to just go, I don't know what that is, dismiss and ignore it. We need to make these things friendlier. There's also a whole bunch of ways people do 2FA. Like, I've got 3 or 4 apps on my phone, different authenticators. You're pretty screwed if you don't have your phone, if you lose your config or your restore key. So yeah, there's some problems, and it's just generally clunky for users. It's not very nice. I've mentioned the acronyms everywhere thing, but this is a genuine problem. We need to make the technology accessible to people. Now, Apple, love them or hate them, have done some fantastic work with making sure that some of this technology is available in our pockets. So through the Face ID on the iPhone, or other companies are doing similar things with facial recognition to say, hey, this is you. Using 3D sensors and scanners to actually, make sure you can authenticate in a friendly way. When you set up Face ID, you don't have to do anything other than move your face in front of the camera, and Apple do everything for you. And then next time you need to authenticate, there's none of these acronyms or mentions of be secure. It's just show me your face and we'll let you in. Now actually, we could probably substitute some of these technologies that exist in smartphones for some Azure technologies, just an API call away. We have face detection in the Azure Cognitive Services. We also have speaker recognition, which is currently in preview, but it would give you the ability to say recognize a voice. And we have Connect developer kit, which was supposed to be released and hasn't yet, but I'd like to get my hands on one of those. So actually get proper 3D, generate 3D models of someone's face, and then maybe use that to authenticate. That would be really cool. There's a ton of more services within the Azure suite, and regardless of which provider you use, Amazon, if you wanted, such as Emotion. So we can use Azure to identify a face, which means we could possibly try and replicate something like the Azure, the Apple login. Now, what you need to do is you need to capture a picture when you to authenticate. So let's say through my webcam, I turn that on, and then I need to get some frames from that I can authenticate. Just like the talk we just saw, we're essentially trying to recognize a known object in a picture. In this case, it would be a specific person's face. You can use tools like the video frame analyzer, which is in Azure, or some open source ones like FFmpeg or Media Toolkit that will do that. The code is literally an API call away. So this is .NET, but there's a bunch of SDKs to do it too. For like, call my face service, say this person is this person, and kind of give them my file, and it will go away, train a model, and from there on, it will know, hey, this ID equals this person. Detecting faces is equally simple. You call off to the API with the picture, and you say, do you recognize anyone in this? And then maybe as part of the system that we built, we could go, we're looking for this person, this identifier. If that comes back, then sure, we have something that we could potentially use to verify that that person is who they say they are. And of course, I've achieve that. Within my Umbraco system, it would be really cool if when someone logs in, maybe they've built a really rubbish password like 1234, but we could get them to authenticate it further. None of this, got to set up an authenticator app, just straight in the login, tell me who you are. So, super unsecure user, and when I log in, this is now going to fire up my webcam, and it's going to capture a picture of my face. Oh, crap. Okay, it didn't recognize me. It's going to capture my face. It's going to send it off to Azure using the Cognitive Services API and say, for this username, does this picture match who you're expecting to see? Let's give it one more try. Okay, maybe not. We'll come back to that. But of course, this is actually very flawed. This is a bit of fun. It has a bunch of issues. It could really easily be tricked. If I held up a picture of myself, it would probably also go, hey, that's you. That's who I'm expecting to see. That's not highly secure. Also, recording your webcam is kind of scary. Imagine logging into Facebook and Facebook suddenly popping your webcam up. That would not be a good yeah. And really awkward in meetings. Imagine having to be like, oh, give me a sec, guys. I've just got to. Yep, I'm in now. It's not very practical. And I think a third thing, which is interesting, using these big cloud providers, Microsoft, Amazon, they're backed by big companies, and people are generally nowadays becoming a bit more concerned about giving sensitive data to these companies. Whilst it's just a picture of your face, you know, it could, if it was to be leaked at some point, they're being stored somewhere, it could be a bit serious. I fully imagine that in a few years' time, we're going to have these kind of services where your iPhone's been hacked and your face is available online. I don't know. I hope this doesn't ever happen. So some potential solutions. We're not building Fort Knox here. We're not saying this is going to be the most secure thing in the world, but we could come up with some more things to make it more complex and maybe use some of the other APIs available to us, such as movement, emotion, speech, and maybe detecting things within a picture. Not everyone has a 3D sensor, so we're still a little bit limited. We could use a 3D sensor, but we're trying to make this as accessible to people as possible. And also, it would be really cool if, just like on the iPhone, you could process this offline. So using all of this tech. We can't call Azure when we're not online, so maybe there's a better solution. I want to look at a couple of pretty cool technologies. WebAuthn is a standard for authenticating for cryptography in the browser. And TensorFlow.js is a way of running machine learning models, or TensorFlow models, in the browser too. My computer's getting really hot right now because there is one running, and they do use a ton of processing power, but actually this is becoming more accessible. The fact that if 5 years ago someone said you're going to run a machine learning model in your browser, people would go, you're crazy, because they used to require so much power. It's becoming more and more accessible. WebAuthn allows you to exchange tokens for things like a biometric scanner or a YubiKey to say, hey, this is me. And then you can exchange the tokens that way. It means that you could do offline auth effectively with, this is my face, you generate some kind of token to say, yep, that is the person I think they are, and send them straight on to authenticate. It works like this. It's actually in Chrome currently and Firefox. No Safari support, but let's see if they catch up. But where it gets really interesting is this idea of actually using AI as part of this process. So completely offline, away from Azure, not having to send a big company a picture of my face or store a model with my data in it. You can do really advanced things actually, or increasingly advanced things like training a neural network, building your own models. There's a bunch of pre-built ones, open source, available on GitHub, and they've trained them on some pretty vast different subject areas. So there's some that identify objects. There's some that you can play tic-tac-toe against the AI purely in JavaScript, which is kind of cool. So I started playing around with something called Coco SSD. It's an object detection model for TensorFlow.js. And this actually allows you to identify up to 90 objects in images or video. In a very similar way to Azure would, you have to get frames from video or just send one for an image, and it will go and run through its model and work out what's in the frame. And you can then choose to identify something or not. There's different versions of the model. You can have a really low performance or a high performance one, depending on the level of accuracy you want, which is kind of cool too. And it's completely open source on GitHub. This is how you'd interact with it. So you load in a couple of lines of JavaScript, and then just say, hey, here's my image. Go off and tell me if you think this or is in the image, or get me a list of the things that are on this image. Okay. So just like I did before, where I have my webcam popping up and I want to then say, hey, this is this person, we could actually swap some of that out to be a bit different. So maybe use my, my TensorFlow.js model. So I've hacked this together a little bit so that I can demo it to you. I've configured my authentication to say you can choose a couple of different types of authentication. Let's say you wanted to say, yeah, you can take a picture of my face, but also I want you to verify my voice is who I say I am. And all we're going to do is say you've got two types of auth. I'm going to do the work required for each of those, and if they both match, you're good to go. One of those that I've added here is object. So if I was to do face and object in there, what this will do is it will say, okay, we're going to try and detect an object, but we're going to do that completely offline, and you're never going to send that data up to Azure. This is particularly cool because it's going to use TensorFlow.js. If I refresh this, source of water, yes. So I've actually set my key to be a picture of a water bottle. I've trained the AI to say, when I log in as me, take a picture of my face and verify that it's me, but also verify that I'm holding a water bottle. It's super stupid. It's just one of the things that they've already trained their model up to detect. But I was like, screw it, it's kind of an everyday object, so let's try it out. Now, this is going to look exactly the same as it did before. It's going to look exactly the same as it did before, but when I log in, it's then going to pop up my camera and it's going to expect two things. One, my face, and two, the water bottle. Damn. It's not very well, is it? Let's try that once more. Okay. Ah, God's sake. This was working 10 minutes ago. But as you kind of expect, that would hopefully go, yes, this is a water bottle, and say, yeah, you can go ahead. Maybe we'll try once more with just the object detection. It might be failing on my face. Show your secret object. Never mind. There is a demo of this on my GitHub, which there'll be a link to. I think the key message from this is 90% of security is actually about education. We need to help people help us keep secure, and to do that, we need to make sure things are user-friendly. Because if we make it friendly, then people can actually, they don't have to worry too much about things like two-factor. We can make it seamless and they don't have to worry about it. And thankfully, because all of these technologies are becoming increasingly accessible and free even and easy to use, we can do all of that either in the browser or just through an API. This is a huge superpower that we have in modern software development that 10 years ago would be much more difficult. You can use all of these services like Azure Cognitive Services, or maybe even the Face ID camera on your iPhone or TensorFlow to then authenticate someone. We can use those data inputs as a way of doing a whole bunch of things, whether it's actually logging someone in or just checking they are who they say they are when they apply for something online. I don't know. Thank you. That's the GitHub link up there. Please go and have a play. There's a whole GIF of it working and everything, so I don't know why I didn't include that. I'll take some questions, but there's also going to be a break straight after, so we can talk then too. Thank you.